Namaskar. I am Abhigya Lange, Research Assistant here at CENJOWS. Welcome you all to yet another episode of the podcast series. Today we have with us Dr. Pavan Chaurasia, who will be helping us understand the ongoing conflict in the Western Asia and how it is affecting the other dynamics of the world order. Before we dive into the podcast series and we start with the question, a small introduction about our expert. So Dr. Pavan is a research fellow at India Foundation, New Delhi. He holds a bachelor degree in political science from Delhi University and MA and MPhil degree from JNU in international relations. He completed his PhD from the Center of Western Asian Studies, School of International Studies, JNU. His research interest includes international relations, Indian foreign policy, West Asian geopolitics, energy security, the Indian constitution, public policy, and the Indian political thought. So we welcome you, sir, here at the center. So my first question to you is very simple and straightforward. When powerful nations form war coalitions, and can smaller countries afford to stay neutral?
First of all, allow me to thank you, Dr. Abhigya, and, and the entire team of CENJOWS for giving me this opportunity to reflect my views on a topic of great relevance, and a topic that is not merely academic, but something that has impacted the life of all of us. Um, so, when you talk about the issue that in this age of globalization and this age of hyper-realism, uh, can small countries remain aloof and not join the war in the conventional sense, or can be separated or can stay quote unquote neutral? So, in order to understand this issue, uh, first you have to delve with some ideas. If we trace the politics and the international relations from, say, post World War, you will find that immediately after World War, what happened is that the world got divided into two blocks, mainly two blocks: the Western bloc in the first world and the second world. And that is how theory is defined as the in terms of structural realism. It was defined as that this new world order had two poles. The world became bipolar. And in that aspect, what you saw is that the two poles exerted their sphere of influence and tried to bring more countries into their fold. But simultaneously, there were certain countries that did not wanted to be a part of any coalition and wanted their foreign policies to remain independent. They wanted their sovereignty to remain intact, and therefore they decided not to ally with any country and form a separate bloc, which was known as non-aligned movement, of which India was a founding member and a strong pillar. So that actually worked very well because all those countries could uh, take stand. Being neutral doesn't mean that you remain blind to whatever is happening, but it means actually in the practical terms that you will take a call not based on the ideological conviction, not based on the pressure by some external power, but based on your national interest, on your national vision, on your national perspective. So that is the idea that was unfolded during the era of Cold War. That continued well, and structuralist, in order to understand this whole idea, the structuralist school of thought believed that this form of bipolarity made the world a little stable. So therefore, the war did not escalate into a full-fledged war and it remained only a Cold War. However, coming back to our contemporary issue about what's happening around the world, two wars are going on, two major wars. Uh, the luxury of being neutral at this point of time has perhaps now gone away. What we are seeing is crude realist policies being deployed by great powers, and that is being done without any adherence to rules, ideas, norms that were the foundational stone of that acted as financial stone for the world order that existed for so long. Uh, but now we see that it has become more and more difficult in this fragile, in this multipolar world, it has become very difficult for a country to remain neutral, uh, especially small countries and the countries that don't have many resources. For them, it has become a very critical challenge. And why has it become so complex? I want to make it clear through three strands that will be more clear to you. The first strand is that of how this has led to this new world order has led to the erasure or the abolition of gray zone. What happened was that in the Cold War, there were two blocks, and there was so-called third block. The third block served as a gray zone. I mean, you followed what was beneficial for you, and you talked to both the sides, you interacted with both the delegates, and tried not just to secure your interest, but for the interest of humanity at large. I mean, you argued for world peace, you argued for more funds for developing countries, you argued for protection of sovereignty. These were the pillars uh, that continued. Now what we see is that uh, that structure is gone. That gray zone, countries have deliberately attempted to remove that gray zone, and now you see this clear-cut policy. What was promulgated by Bush, either you are with us or against us. So it is clearly us versus them binary. So countries are left with no other options. This is the first perspective to understand. Second perspective is how uh, earlier what we used to understand was that what the liberal school argues for complex interdependence. So, but now what we see is that we have become a weaponized interdependence. So when I talk about weaponized interdependence, is that uh, in this age of globalization, all countries are integrated in some way or the other. But now this integration is one way very beneficial. But on the flip side of it, it is very problematic also because it has been weaponized by certain countries for their own benefit. For example, you see, when Russia started this special military operation, what it calls in Ukraine, so uh, Russia was thrown out of the SWIFT payment system. Now, uh, you may argue that Russia should not have started this conflict or whatever you like to call it, but that is a separate thing. But the fact is that had Britain, had Germany, had France done the same, would it been thrown out of the SWIFT system? Perhaps no. So this is how the when you talk about complex interdependence, you talk about how world is becoming integrated. So that integration is also weaponized by Western powers in order to for their own benefits. Now it is thrown out of the SWIFT system, it cannot do international transactions. So it is facing a loss of money. Second, related to it is that you see, uh, in London, you have a big market for insurance of the ships that travel in oceans. So, whichever country wants to get to do international trade, it needs ships, and ships, you must know, never move without any insurance because they are very expensive and they carry a very expensive material. And if one loss takes place, so it is huge loss. So that is why the insurance system is done. Now, if I want to punish you, I may not do directly, but I may not give, I will not insure your ship. That will cause great damage to economical, or I may raise the premium according to my own perspective that, okay, you are a country that comes under risk zone, so I will charge 300% more. I am not denying you, but I am charging according to my own understanding. Correct. So this, and third point is that moral notion of the war. So these days wars or conflicts are being portrayed as war between democracy and autocracy, war between rule of law and anarchy. So the countries are left with not just political argument, but with a moral argument that, see, if you are not supporting democracy, then you are wrong. If you're not supporting rule of law, that means you're wrong. That is how you see structures moving.
That's a great perspective, sir. So, running into the second question that we have here, Iran did not need to win a naval battle. It just blocked a narrow sea lane and paralyzed a world oil trade. What does this tell us about how controlling strategic choke points can be more powerful than just engaging in military, battles that are very traditional in nature?
Thank you. Now, this is also a very important question, and especially when we see that the conflict is more on the seas than on the land. And you see, for a very long period of time, we all believed that the thought process of great naval strategist Alfred Mahan, who was the was the conventional wisdom that in order to control the geopolitics of the world, you need to have a very strong naval presence. You need to have blue ocean, blue navy, and you need to have many ships. You need to have frigates, destroyers, whatnot. And countries after countries followed this dictum and continued for a very long period of time. Uh, it actually, in a way, helped also many countries in making them a big naval power. You see how Britain in the history became a important power because of its navy. So this is a point that had been always validated, but now there are some caveats to it. You see, when this war started, so everyone knew that Iran stands no chance in terms of military or in terms of naval power of the US and Israel combined. But what you see is that Iran smartly, what it did is that it understood that its strength is not its military, but its natural geography. So it played well with its smart geography. It realized that what it can do is that it does not have to fight with US ship by ship. It does not have to have several aircraft carriers, but it needs to have those technologies, those military equipments that are relatively cheap, affordable for a stagnant economy like Iran, but they are strategic in nature. So it invested heavily on drones, on small boats because it did not have a considerable navy. So it's invested heavily on small boats, heavily on the drones that can be placed underwater, under sea. So it acted on two methodologies. Like there are two aspects to it. The first that I want to highlight is that it was uh, sea denial. So it realized that it has this leverage by the name Strait of Hormuz. So Strait of Hormuz is very crucial for it acts like an energy artery of the world. Almost 80% of crude oil or of energy resources for a large part of the world moves from this area, including India. So and that Strait of Hormuz is a very narrow stretch of water. At its narrowest point, it is only 21 miles. And for functional aspect, it is only 1.5. It is only 2.5, if I'm not 2.5 meters for inwards and 2.5 meters for 2 miles for outwards. So it realized that what it can do is that it does not have to have many ships, but or it can attack some of the ships, or it can choke that point so as to make the entire world realize that our energy needs will not be fulfilled if this war continues. So it did our very smart thing. Second step is that you see what I was earlier mentioning about the insurance, the idea of insurance. So it realized that uh, insurance works on a very simple logic. If there is a threat, if there is a risk, then the premium rises. If there is no risk, no threat, then premium remains very low. So it knew that it does not have to destroy each and every weapon, each and every ship. It has to create a perception that your certain ships may be attacked. So what happened is that because of this threat, and because of its the threat created by its other proxy Houthis in the Bab al Mandeb Strait, another strait. So there are two important straits, Strait of Hormuz and Bab al Mandeb. So the conventional pathways for the ships that usually carry energy and hydrocarbons, it got heavily hampered. So it escalated the premiums for insurance of the ships, causing huge damage. So this was something that US perhaps may have not anticipated, that Iran may not be strong militarily, but it will be using resources most judiciously, something that I believe that US may have failed to do. And third important point related to it is that it realized that US Gerald Ford and Lincoln, this aircraft carrier, will not be very safe and will be vulnerable if they enter that strategic point. And it will because their fleet will face some kind of threat if it remains in that position for a very long period of time. So it knew that it has to deflate them away, and it did so in a very beautiful manner. So that is how it gained control in that region without actually, matching the strength of US or even Israel.
So basically using your brains much more
Yes.
than the
Yes.
resources.
True.
So my third question to you is that the US was bombing Iran, and ironically, they were also negotiating with Iran at the same time. Is this a smart strategy, using military force to push the enemy towards a better deal? Or does it make diplomacy less credible when one side keeps attacking while offering peace?
Yeah. This is also very interesting, and people uh, who we meet generally raise this question that having guns and roses, I mean, how is that possible?
Correct, sir.
So, for common people, it may look like some kind of absurdity, illogical thing. But for students of international relations and geopolitics, it is very clear that this is nothing but a form of coercive diplomacy. So, what you do in coercive diplomacy is that uh, it is not conventional war, neither it is conventional diplomacy. So, in war, your aim is to completely annihilate your enemy, completely destruct its military capability. And in diplomacy, is that your aim is to win your national interest, to secure national interest without the need for armed forces. But in coercive diplomacy, you use your military strength uh, not just for attacking the enemy, but creating some kind of psychological threat perception that see we also have this capacity and we will annihilate you, we will destroy you, we will cause substantive damage to your country if you do not follow to our dictum, if you do not follow to follow our commands, or if you do not come for the negotiation table and let diplomacy get a chance. So here military is not an end in itself, the use of military, but it's a means, and the end is what? End is diplomacy. So this is the idea that US tried to use in the case of Iran, that it tried to use this coercive diplomacy to bring Iran to the table. I believe that if we kill the supreme leader, or if we attack certain its oil facilities or its other important establishment, so what will happen is that it will be forced to come on the negotiation table, and it will also be forced to accept those terms that we will impose upon. But see, this idea of coercive diplomacy looks very interesting and very fascinating when it is only discussed in academic circles and theoretical model. But when you implement it in practically, then there is one important element that should never be overlooked, which is the limit of this coercive diplomacy. Here comes an important factor that they have used this coercive diplomacy to bring Iran for the negotiation table. But the element that they miss is that the idea of threat perception should always be proportionate. Now, and should also come with the credibility. Now, if it has been done once, then I can understand. But if it has been done multiple times, so its credibility loses. Like there are two times when they attacked, when they were in negotiations table, Iran and US were negotiating, and they attacked. So now what happens is that Iran has no trust in your diplomacy, and it is of the belief that in any case your best weapons, your best military minds have already been used and kind of exhausted. So this is the limit that we are seeing of coercive diplomacy. We are seeing how US is not just failing on high tables, but also failing on the military aspect. It may boast whatever it wants to boast, but the reality is that President Trump wants a PR deal, wants some kind of deal to come out, and it should come out as early as possible. So this is something that he is trying to put upon, and this is what we believe that the coercive diplomacy do exist, but it has to be used very strategically and not not like it can go unended. So there is a limit to it.
So adding to this question, although it's not there in the questions that we formed yet, how do you think it is working out for them?
For
The US as well as for Iran in this case?
see, initially in his first term, Trump used this policy of maximum pressure. So it wanted to uh, put maximum pressure on Iran to get what US wanted. But that's a very different story. In this contemporary times, what we are seeing is that US has perhaps exhausted all its cards, all its advantages and leverages, and now it wants a deal to take place as soon as possible, because there are many elements. So it's not just militarily a disaster, but also politically it is causing a lot of damage to President Trump. You see, um, he came to power with the promise that we will end the endless wars. We will. Why should the American taxpayers' money be used on fighting wars which we don't have to be worried about? But now he has been precisely doing what he used to criticize. So this is one aspect. Another important aspect is that the midterms elections are fast approaching, and Republican Party, the member of Republican parties, and those who will contest the election, they are extremely worried. They are worried that if this war continues, the public anger may be reflected by the number of votes that they will get, and then if he loses the majority, President Trump, then he will become a lame duck president, to use that term, and he will not be able to take any major policy decisions. So this is something that is causing pressure to President Trump also.
Thank you, sir. My fourth question is that India imports over 80% of its oil, and large share passes through the same area where the conflict is happening. The West Asia conflict has shown how quickly one country can paralyze an important route or port and lead to a disaster in trade. How should India rethink its energy security strategy, from diversifying oil sources to building a larger strategic reserve and strengthening its naval presence in the Indian Ocean region?
Thank you. See, there are some things that are gifted to you by geography, and there are some things that come as a curse because of geography. So some countries have this gift of geography of like sitting in, with huge resources of oil. Some African countries have huge resources, like cobalt and nickel, and that is how geography gives you. But sometimes they are also a curse. For example, many landlocked countries, for them geography is in a way curse. But uh, theoretically, this is a different aspect. But realistically speaking, you see, had this conflict taken place 10 years back, India would have faced much more challenges than what's facing now. I'm not saying that India is completely free of this challenge or of this issue. We are seeing price rise for gas, LPG gases, for oil, and whatever aspects are related to it. But the point is that for last 1 decade we have diversified our energy sources, and we have tried to get hydrocarbons from wherever it is possible, not just limited to earlier. What used to happen is that we were only confined to certain countries of West Asia, especially Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and UAE. So they were our biggest um, exporters of oil and gases. And another point that I think should also be highlighted is that West Asia for us is not just important for fuel and gases, but for fertilizers also. You see, because we are an agriculture based economy. I mean, not in terms of our GDP, but of course in terms of the number of people, that the percentage of population that is directly or indirectly dependent on agriculture is huge, huge. So anything which happens that has a impact on our agricultural production causes the damage to our aspects. And people say that it is the monsoon which is the which is the finance minister of India for a large population. But yes, and so fuel, energy are two elements, and you see, India has been trying to diversify our the our oil basket. And here you should also understand that um, for last some years, uh, how diversification has worked. I want to highlight this before your audience, that we started taking oil from Russia. Russian Urals came to our market, and from around 4-5%, it moved to almost 40% of our oil basket. So this is something that we did over a period of time, because our Prime Minister and our Foreign Minister made it categorical that we will buy oil from wherever is we find it cheap, wherever it is convenient for us. We will look for our own national interest, for the benefit of our own people, than any other external power guiding us or dictating us what to do or what not to do. So this was very clear in the Indian establishment, that is something that we have been doing for say many years. And another point is that in order to secure our energy needs, you see, we have also been developing strategic petroleum reserves for almost 2-3 decades, and we are doing pretty good. So it is believed that one country should have ideally 90 days of reserves, and if the government data says that, including both private sector and oil companies and government, it is around 72 or 70 days, 70 plus days our oil of our need we have secured. And we are also moving to SPR 2.0. I mean, we are building more strategic both in East Coast and West Coast, so that if such adverse problem comes in the future, then we may have enough resources. And this is particularly related to hydrocarbons. Another point that we need to highlight is that we are also, you see, we have transformed our energy sector in such a way that now we are moving towards EVs. We are moving toward renewable resources. So we are working on increasing the capacity of our for production for energy resources from renewables. And India is among the notable countries that has done commendable job in terms of switching from hydrocarbons to green energy. This is something that we have been promoting in a very active and robust manner. So that's one point. Third point is that, see, Indian Navy, for a very long period of time, it has actually acted in a very robust and responsible manner in the Indian Ocean. And we have always responded to the needs of the time, from the times of tsunami to different issues whenever they came up. So Indian Navy responded, and Indian Navy helped not just people of India but for other countries also. You see, even the US and other countries have thanked India in the past for our quick help. So, and it is not just Indian Navy, but what I call is whole of government or whole of a security establishment approach. So it's not that Indian Navy, Indian Army, Indian Air Force, they all do things in cohort or in convergence. So that is something that we are seeing, and we believe that in order to secure our energy security, we need to do more. We are doing really good, but we need to do more. And Indian Navy is ensuring that that whatever ships come from Strait of Hormuz, they are given acute security, because we are not a party to the war. So we will not go there and we will not fight someone else's war, but we will ensure that our national interests are not hampered.
So you've mentioned Russia. I'll mention China. So the last question from me to you is that China and Russia have deep ties with Iran, but both of them stayed on sidelines while US and Israel attacked it. Does this tell us something about the limits of alliance in today's world, and that powerful friends will not fight for you? And what does this mean for countries that rely on great power guarantees for their security?
See, this war has opened the eyes of many people who believe that this is an era of liberal world order. This is an era of globalization. This is an era where state in its conventional sense is receding, and now we are seeing MNCs, TNCs, and uh, global organizations taking the lead. But this war has reinforced and reimposed the idea of conventional structural realism. And rule one, like point one of realism, says that states have to ensure their own survival and security. So many countries of the world, either knowingly or unknowingly, they made a major blunder, which was that outsourcing the most important element of your survival, which is your security. So Europe has done this. Europe has outsourced its security to US, and now it is somewhat paying the price. At least it is being threatened by President Trump that we will annex, take away Greenland and whatever. So coming back to the point, so see, this is what reality is. This is what realism also talks about, that no country will fight for you, no country in the world will come for your security. There is no world government, there is no overarching power that will come. There are no alliances, like traditional military alliances, not just tactical alliances. You need traditional military, like on paper alliances, which guarantees that if so one country is attacked, so and so country who are duty bound to protect, they will come. So it does not happen, and it's not happening here also. So uh, Russia and China, they are very close to Iran, there is no doubt about it. And like they have always portrayed to the world that there is an alliance which stands against the dictum, against the rule, against the hegemony of the Western powers. This Russia, China, North Korea, and Cuba, whatever countries you want to include. But uh, there are limits to it. So I will talk about China first, then I'll come to Russia. See, China is a very interesting country, very powerful, very rich, very technologically advanced. But you also have to understand the nature of Chinese state. China is very clear about certain foreign policy ecosystems. It believes that it will never meddle in the affairs of others. It does not want to have the conventional leadership role that US or USSR used to have at one point of time. It it is acting like a pure businessman who wants money come out from all sides. Doesn't want to be directly associated with any party that may cause damage to its economic resources, and wants to ensure that its security and its interests are preserved. In the case of Iran also, you see they had signed some strategic partnership in 2021, which kind of made people believe that China will come for the protection of Iran. But when this war started, so what you have seen is that China did not come actively to support or to give any kind of military support to Iran. Iran was left on its own. Now there is one aspect to it. Some people may say that China may have supported without letting the world know. That may be the case, and that may not be the case. I mean, since we do not have any evidences, so we cannot say it with full conviction. But the point is that China is a very smart power. See, it understands that the war is not between US and Iran as such. The allies of the US have also been affected. Its allies like Saudi Arabia, like Kuwait, like Qatar have also been affected. UAE openly coming out and fighting with Iran will antagonize the other regional powers, will uh, other Gulf countries who also happen to be good friend of China. With China does a lot of trade, including energy trade. So China does not wants to antagonize those countries at the cost of merely Iran. This is one element that China keeps in mind. Now, another point related to it is that China understands that if it meddles too much, for all the rhetoric that is being said and done, it does a lot of business with the West. It will not jeopardize its business interests in the West by openly aligning with Iran. So this is something. When it comes to Russia, then you will have to keep certain things in mind. Russia, since 2022, is itself involved in a major war. And you have seen its resources depleting. You have seen it is how much it is longing for men to fight this war. It is asking North Korea, many North Koreans have joined, asking its friendly countries, and many of the Indians have been fooled and they have been cheated to go and fight. So Russia is itself embroiled in a major conflict that practically it is not possible for Russia. First element is. Second point, as with China, it doesn't want to go directly against US in the West. Now the third point is very interesting. This war, in a way, is actually benefiting Russia. You see, there are two elements to it. First is that because of this war, the West, especially the US, has lost its legitimacy to criticize Russia. That you attacked one country without any provocation. The provocation was entirely self-made, and you are not adhering to international law, international norms, and recklessly killing people. So now Russia believes that the entire West has come on the same pedestal, losing its moral right. So it is in a way beneficial to it. Second point is that you see, President Trump lifted sanctions on Russian oil and let many countries buy oil. Isn't it benefiting Russia? Because of this conflict, President Trump allowed Russian oil to come. So this is something that Russia also understands, that Iran is a friend, but we are not living in an era of pure ideological conviction. We are living in an era of pure hyper-realism, where your interest triumph for any ideology, any friendship, any conviction. Your primary, secondary, tertiary interest is your national interest, your own benefits. So if your advantages may benefit other countries, it's well and good. If they do not, then also it's okay. This is how the simple idea of alliances run these days. And another point related to is that this war is also creating a structure where Russia and China can, in a way, take high moral ground also. That see, they had the capacity to attack, but they exercised quote unquote strategic restraint. They did not let the war escalate. So sometimes moral arguments also help you in putting forward your interests. And similarly for China also, the US has lost its legitimacy to question China morally if in the future it does the same for Taiwan. If it attacks Taiwan, so it can also call out US if it criticizes, if it says that no, what you are doing is morally wrong. It's not. Say that this is something that you have done. What provocation did Iran give to you that you attacked? You were on negotiation table. How suddenly you started attacking? So these are the aspects that come into existence whenever some countries decide to fight for other countries or not. And in this age, no country wants to take the trouble of sending its soldiers to other countries, especially because your own soldiers are very vulnerable. China has not fought any war for decades, and hypothetically, if sends some soldiers, if they do not perform well, its entire image, carefully crafted image, may go for a toss, and people may start questioning about the
strength
the strength and the hyper powerful image that China has built up. So this is something that is being kept in mind by both China and Russia in order to not be directly associated with it. But of course, this is also a point that in the future, maybe after 10 or 20 years or 30 years, I don't know. But there may come some declassified reports that China and Russia were actually helping Iran. It's to be seen.
So, thank you so much for coming here and giving us a
Thank
view
you.
that majority of us were not aware of.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you so much.